Well, welcome to Beyond Resistance Pod, where we help red communities build blue power and start winning. I'm Sarah Schultz.
And I'm Jennifer Austin.
And today we're just so thrilled to be joined by Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. He's a public health advocate, a public servant, and a candidate for the U.S. Senate for the state of Michigan. Abdul, welcome to the pod. How are you feeling today?
Thank you so much for having me. Feeling excited. I'm honored to be here with you all in your space, and I'm excited for the conversation. Grateful for the work that you all have been doing, and I see the work that you do, the pieces that you put down in my travels across Michigan. So honored to be here to share a conversation about it.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And so to just kind of kick us off, just for those listeners who might not have had a chance to meet you yet, can you just share with us a little bit about why you decided to run for Senate?
Yeah, well, look, I've been a physician and epidemiologist in my career, and I got into this because I started to ask questions about why people got sick in the first place, and too often it has to do with pathologies in our politics instead of the physiology you spend a lot of time learning in medical school, and that shapes the air people breathe and the water they drink, the food they have access to, the jobs they get to work, and whether or not they get to work them again tomorrow, the houses that they get to live in, and whether or not they get to see a doctor in the first place. Now, I've been traveling for 37 different cities, been 3 months now, and one of the things that I hear everywhere I go is it just shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this hard to afford groceries, or to know your job's going to be there for you tomorrow, or believe that the air you breathe or the water you drink is healthy, safe, and pure. And I'm running in large part because I feel that too often those questions get overlooked in our politics. And we want to do three very simple things in this campaign, and hopefully when I get elected to office. The first is we want to take money out of politics. It is the central issue that tends to animate all of the other issues, whether it's the fact that your electricity is impossible to afford, it's too hard to find good housing, your groceries are too expensive, your health insurance sucks. Like, all of that goes back to the fact that huge corporations can plow money into our politics to buy off politicians and get regulation that benefits them and hurts the rest of us. The second is we want to put more money in people's pockets. And that means standing up to those big corporations and taking on the power of monopolies and oligopolies in all of these different parts of our lives. Or it means empowering people to build and scale small businesses or join or form a union. And then finally, in the richest, most powerful country in the world, you should not have to worry about when or how you're going to get your health care. And so we need to guarantee health care through Medicare for all. And so we're running a people-powered campaign. We're going all over the state to have these conversations. And we're seeing resonance in people's living rooms and VFW halls and union halls. And I'm really proud of the campaign we're running, but more importantly, grateful for folks who are willing to open their minds and their hearts to an opportunity to come together, not despite our differences, but because of our differences, to build access to the things that all of us need and deserve.
Thank you so much for running. I say that as a citizen of the state of Michigan and as a former candidate, that knowing exactly what it takes to do that. And I'm just very grateful for you for doing that.
Well, Sarah, I'll tell
for
you,
doing it the way you're doing it.
you knew this, and that when you run for office, you are often treading the pathway that other people made easier for you. So, the fact that you made a courageous run in Central Michigan, that makes it easier when I step in and start talking about the same issues that you were talking about. And all of us need to be thinking about ourselves as being able to pick up the baton from somebody who's done it before and recognize that we're going to hand it off to somebody else. But so long as we're talking about the same sets of issues and offering a narrative that is against so much of what Donald Trump has used to exploit people's pain to get to power, I think that we're all in this work together. So I'm grateful for the way you've made the path easier, and I hope that I get to set up for a potentially a next run for you.
Thank you, Abdul. It's all like cathedral building, right? It never ends, and that's intentional.
And thank you so much for saying that about Sarah, because our friend group tells her this all the time. And she's super humble and really doesn't want to hear it. But, when we talk about what we have done in Midland, it didn't specifically start with Sarah. There were other building blocks, but hers was a huge part of the progress that we have made in Midland. Like, we would not be where we are without the work that Sarah has done.
Thank you.
But it's interesting that you mentioned like all the, I think you said 37 cities or something that you've been to, because that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about. Like the point of our podcast is helping small communities or any community really that wants to build blue power, especially if they're in a red area, but whomever, can learn something from what we're doing. And I'm pretty connected, a lot of social media and talking to people and whatnot. And every time I turn around, it's like, Abdul El-Sayed was here. Abdul El-Sayed was here. Like you are everywhere. And I'm talking like, even in the UP, I think you've been up there. And so like, one, I think that's amazing. That's grassroots. That's what we need to do. And two, like, I'm just really interested. What have you learned being in all of these, big and small communities? What things have you learned from people or the area or whatever about how to build that blue power? Like not necessarily the policies that we have to talk about, but like what mechanisms, what are you using? What things have you learned that are working in these communities?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. And, there's a lot of consternation among the wizened old Democratic heads about my name. And there are a lot of upsides to my name. One of them is I've learned from the day I was born that you can't take anything for granted. And when you can't take anything for granted, you do the work. And so the thing I always tell folks, I'm like, listen, I'm a child of immigrants. Nobody is going to outwork me. Nobody. And so we go everywhere and talk to everyone because I don't take for granted that I'm going to be able to earn your vote because, I'm asking somebody to buy me a glossy ad that gives you my bio in 30 seconds. I know that I need to go out and meet you. I need to listen to you. I need to see the whites of your eyes as you tell me about the challenges in your life. And I need to fully internalize them. But one of the things I've realized is too often, I think that we make a lot of differences in geography because we're told by our political system that those geographic differences matter so much that we cannot possibly see eye to eye that the issues that people are suffering with in a community like Midland or a community like Escanaba or a community like Detroit are so different. But I always find that like if you just closed your eyes and you didn't see the person in front of you, it's like the conversations that you're sharing could be interchangeable. Doesn't matter where you go. If you're talking to working people or retired people in communities like Escanaba or Detroit, they're talking about the same problems. They're saying, I'm worried about ever being able to afford a home if I'm under the age of 40 or staying in the home I've lived in if I'm over the age of 65. I'm worried about the price of groceries that I actually have to put some of my groceries back because when I tally it up before I go and check out, I know I'm not going to be able to afford it. I'm worried about whether or not I could see a doctor. And if I do, whether or not that's going to put me into debt. I'm worried about the quality of the school that my kid is going to. It doesn't matter whether you're a white person in Escanaba, you're a tribal elder in the Sioux, or you're a Black American in Detroit or Redford. Those are the same issues you're talking about. And our job is to be able to connect people across those differences because the things that we're fighting for are the same. And I wish that more of us understood that rather than trying to do this thing where people will pick up a set of potential talking points to one community or another and then go and pander to that community. And I think it's exactly what's wrong with the way that too often Democrats do politics. Find the things that people connect on and then talk about those things and then suggest real solutions to them that demonstrate that you've thought through the issue and that you're not bought off by some corporation who's in the business of making it worse.
Oh, so true. I mean, everything that you said just resonates so much with our experience.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, and I won't name politicians, but I saw somebody, and it was edited, so I don't know everything that was put into it, but there was just, they were asked a question and they kind of answered it, but there was no real solution. And I was just like, you were so close, so close.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about, really showing up in these communities, really understanding the issues that they care about. I like to call that transformational relationships versus like transactional relationships, which seem to just occur everywhere in politics, where we just like show up on someone's, doorstep one time for a 30-second conversation and expect their vote, or have one quick phone call and expect a $50 check to come in the mail. It's more about really understanding people and who they are and what, the issues that they care about when they put their head on their pillow at night. And I think you're absolutely right. Those issues, remain ubiquitous across communities, and we don't need to set up barriers. And I also think what I appreciate about you showing up in these ways is that you show up in communities that have been written off by the Democratic Party in the past, right? And you've been doing that for years, where, we're never going to win here, we're never going to build momentum or excitement here. So why bother? Why invest? Why, put some time into it? And the fact that you're here, you're showing up in all of these places, listening to folks, really means a lot. So I appreciate that hard work that you're doing.
And Sarah, I want to pick up on that point because I think it's really important. I'm running for a 6-year office, right? Like God willing, if I win the seat, like I will be in that role for 6 years. And if I'm not relevant to you 6 years on, then I will have betrayed the decision that you made. So I'm not coming to you just to ask you for a vote. I'm coming to you so that I have learned as much as I can about your life so that I can render the service that you are electing me to render 6 years from now, right? And so if you don't think about it as a long-term relationship that is about doing your homework to understand the person you're trying to serve, then at some point, to your point, it just becomes a transaction. Like to me, this is about doing that work. Maybe old habits die hard, but I trained in medicine. You need to know your patient, right? At some point, like if you don't know your patient, then what are you even doing? Because there's no way you're going to be able to try and treat them. So my job is to learn my patient. And that's the reason I go out there. And let's be clear, there's a reason that a lot of folks haven't voted for Democrats in the past because A, we don't come, B, it's clear we don't care, and C, right, we think of ourselves as delivering for our voters rather than delivering for our state. Like if I'm elected, I will be the senator, one of 2 senators from the state of Michigan. That means whether you elected me or you did not, whether you love me or you hate me, whether you think I'm the best senator or the worst senator, it is still my responsibility to be your best senator, the best senator I can be for you. And that means I got to go and I got to listen. And I just think that if more of us thought about the service rendered rather than the vote collected, I think it would be a lot easier to do this well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that.
Absolutely. I just appreciate your voice in this race so much and all of your progressive ideas and the ways that you communicate them. You have a way of like showing up and talking to anyone in ways that allow us to understand, right, some of these complex ideas. And it helps us like get energized. And that's really part of the role of local organizers is to help galvanize support and energy around these big ideas. When you were here in Midland back in June, you shared a metaphor, and I'm a sucker for a good metaphor. And the metaphor had to do with
stop talking about it, just so you know.
I know. I wrote it down. I took note in my cell phone, and I keep talking about this metaphor. I like collect metaphors, and this one is a good one. But it had to do with describing capitalism and like power and wealth in politics as either an old growth forest or a garden. I wonder if you just for my sake, if no one else's, if you could just like talk a little bit about that metaphor, because I think it really helps. It helped me really kind of conceptualize the difference.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. And people like to try and label me a socialist. I'm not. I'm a capitalist who has actually done the homework of reading about capitalism. And when you read about capitalism, you come to understand that the biggest danger to capitalism was never government regulation. The biggest danger to capitalism was always monopoly. And if you think about the ways that corporatists, people who've already won at capitalism, want you to think capitalism is, they will always use the narrative to substantiate their own continued growth. And so you've got these very old trees that continue to grow taller and taller and taller. But we all know that the taller and taller the trees get and the bigger and bigger their canopy becomes, the less sunlight that actually hits the ground. And what that means is that they are literally blocking out the sun for all of the other undergrowth that could happen. And you ask yourself, well, what other kinds of plants could we get? Well, we don't know because these big ones are just blocking out all of the sun. And I think that it's important for us to recognize that if you want a healthy capitalist economy, you have to sustain capacity for all of these other kinds of plants to grow. And that's why I rather think of capitalism like a garden, right? There's going to be some big trees, and that's awesome and great. But if those trees go without being pruned and they are blocking out the sun for the rest of your garden, the rest of your garden is going to be kind of minuscule. And that's the kind of economy we've gotten. And so if we're serious about having a full, healthy kind of capitalist economy, we've got to be serious about the kind of government pruning that needs to happen to make sure that none of the old, huge corporations are blocking out the sun for everybody else. And to me, right, my belief in capitalism is about empower everybody to have the basic means of empowering their human capital, meaning they have access to healthcare, they have all the education their brain can suck up, they aren't worried about basic needs, and then they can go and do things like build small businesses and
Yeah.
think a bit about where they want to invest. And we don't get the opportunity to do that. Too many people are struggling with their day-to-day needs. They don't have the basic means of a dignified life. And so they're not actually full participants in our economy. And then we talk about like this being the way capitalism is supposed to be, which just isn't consistent with anything I've read about capitalism, but is consistent with the narrative that the people who've already won at capitalism want you to think capitalism is.
Yeah, so true. I've always thought, and I think about your commitment to Medicare for all, and this idea that if you really care about actual capitalism, like actual like economic growth through small businesses, some corporations, all of that, then you should be a huge supporter of Medicare for all, because I personally know 5 or 6 people who would start a small business if they could break away from the large corporation that they work for, but they can't because they don't have health insurance if they do that, right?
Mhm.
So that's like actual capitalism that our current policies are putting a big block on, because so that's why that metaphor just really works so well for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or run for office. That's what we talked about
Yeah.
with our friend Elena. Like so many
So true.
people don't run for office because they have to have their job. It's not conducive to, schedules and whatnot. Like the only people in this country that seem to be able to run for office generally are those that are independently wealthy or have a flexible schedule, or,
Yeah.
it's not your everyday average person.
Yeah, especially for those local offices that are so important, right? That are not full-time
Mhm.
jobs, but they're, meet Tuesdays at 10 o'clock, right? So like how do you like work through that, those constraints and get
And,
really great people into public positions?
and there's a
Uh,
reason that all of our politicians kind of look the same way, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's a function of what we expect. And we've made it harder and harder for working people to try and balance. If you got to work 2 jobs, right? How does it look for someone who's trying to work 2 jobs to sustain their family to then try and take on this work of running for office, which is unpaid?
yeah,
And it makes it almost impossible. The other point I'll just make is that, to use that analogy even further, there are some things that just have to exist in the soil if you're going to grow either a forest or a garden. And I just think healthcare and education are those 2 things that are
yeah,
just, and
Mhm.
infrastructure being the third, that are just the soil. Like that has to exist for this to all work.
yeah,
And we're watching what's happened as, let's just keep this metaphor going. These old growth trees have sucked up all the nutrients in the soil, right? And now it's just very, very difficult for somebody to try and make it. And, we're told we have the best healthcare in the world. And I just want to be clear about this. If you are privately insured in America, right, the median deductible, meaning the money you pay to get the healthcare you thought you already paid for, is about $4,000. The median household income is about $80,000, which
mm-hmm.
means that in our private insurance system, you are asking the middle family to forego at least a single paycheck to get health insurance that they already had to pay for in every other paycheck.
Yeah,
It's like insanity.
yeah,
And we do this thing thinking that like this is the only way forward. And I hate to say it, but like it just feels like Stockholm syndrome. It's like, no, we don't have to live this way. And it doesn't
mm-hmm.
have to be like this. And the only reason that it is because you've got major health insurance corporations and pharmaceutical corporations who are plowing money into our political system to make sure that there is not deviation in our politics around this issue. And so, if you don't take that money, which is a big reason that I think corporate money is just so important here, it's a lot easier to be honest. And I just got to be clear about it, right? If your politician tells you that they don't take corporate money now, then you should ask, well, did they take it before? Because if they took it
Mm-hmm.
before, then, to use them another metaphor here, it's like, you took steroids your entire bodybuilding career and you stopped yesterday and now you're all natural. Like, no, 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 no. I'm so sorry. Right. But
Yeah,
like you've eaten from that trough. And that has implications. So I just think that like we have to connect the dots for people here around how the system gets corrupted and the ways that politicians get used, both on the left and the right, both Democrats and Republicans, to sustain that system.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're really talking, okay, so you're talking about big, bold ideas, which I love. Even though they're common sense, like it doesn't seem like they should be big, bold ideas, but in the political world we live in, they are. And it reminds me of, I don't know if anybody else is watching Murderbot. If you're not, please do. I want a season 2 really, really bad. But one of the sayings in Murderbot is boldness is all. And like that's what I'm thinking about every time we're talking about these ideas. But like, one of the things I've heard you talk about before is, that we need courage in our leaders, and we need leaders that are going to lead with conviction, based on their values, and make points salient to people in the lexicon of what we're talking about, not just what is the most popular polling thing right now. And so I just wonder if you could talk a little bit more about like what hope and courage and vision, have in what you're doing and what you think the party needs to do going forward.
Yeah, I had a great mentor of mine who told me that that leaders go first and eat last, right? So when it comes to taking risks, leadership is about being willing to be at the front, right? And take that risk first. And when it comes to resources, leadership is about being willing to let everybody else take resources before you do, right? That's what great leaders do. And the hard part is that Democrats are so afraid to lose that we do this thing where we do polls, we look at what's popular, and then we speak directly to what's popular in the poll. And the problem with that is that great leadership goes first, meaning leading isn't just saying the things people already think. Leading is about trying to ask this big question of who are we and who do we want to be? And what does who do we want to be necessitate about what we ought to do, right? And that means being willing to be talking about issues that people aren't yet thinking about because you're doing the persuasive work of saying this is where we ought to go, which is what going first is, right? And that means by definition, Democrats aren't leading because the process by which we're doing politics means that we're kind of following at best, right? Like the people are here, and so we'll just go here. And it leads to this thing where you want to pretend to be a leader, but you're not actually saying anything bold. And the thing about boldness is that it's implicit in what's said, right? And so like you have this thing where it just like looks kind of weird because Democrats are taught to say things with enthusiasm as if enthusiasm is itself boldness. But when you disconnect enthusiasm and boldness, it just looks kind of odd, right? It's like you're punching at the wind here. Like, what are you actually saying? And so we wonder why it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because it's been back engineered in a laboratory, right? And it doesn't work because it looks manufactured. And I just think that like this authenticity point matters a lot. And authenticity is about being willing to say, here's what I believe and why I believe it. And I want you to believe it like me. You may not, but I understand the risk that you may not agree with me. But I want you to understand why I believe this and why I think it's what we ought to do. And what happens is people appreciate that you're willing to disagree with them. And what happens over time is because they appreciate that you're willing to disagree with them, they start to actually take seriously what you're saying because they know you believe it. That's how persuasion works. And like, I hate to say it, but like when Donald Trump came down that hideous golden escalator, immigration was not a major issue in Americans' mind.
Yeah, he made it.
He made it an issue by continuing to talk about it, right? And he talked about it every single time. And he had a narrative, albeit completely disconnected from the truth, which started with your pain over here, whether it was your inability to afford housing or healthcare or you name it. And he always tied it back to, well, some immigrant took your, you name it, your job, your healthcare, your whatever. And that's his thing. And he's been able to convince people, despite zero evidence, like that this is true. And he rode to power doing it. Now, we have the facts on our side, right? Like we actually can demonstrate that a major corporation bought up all of its competitors and then suppressed your wages and raised your prices. And we're not willing to say it because, well, we're taking money from that same corporation. Let's just be clear, right? And so what we're doing is we're talking about these limited sets of issues, or we're being deeply non-specific about what the solution is. Like the healthcare for me is like the one, right? It's so obvious. And I've been talking about this issue for, my whole career, literally. But it's like, Democrats will be like, healthcare is a problem. You're like, yes, it is. So what are you going to do? Like, more affordable healthcare. You're like, okay, so how are you going to do it? Affordability. You're like, okay, no. You're saying the word. How are you going to do it? We're like, we're going to make it more affordable. And you're like, I understand that is the end goal. I understand that there needs to be a process question here. What is your process question? well, we are going to make sure you have healthcare that is affordable. You're like, we're just saying the same thing in a different way. And
That
I hate to
literally
say it,
sounds like an argument with one of my 13-year-olds, but
frankly, your 13-year-old at least would like venture a position that's a little bit different than this, right? But like, and the problem is Democrats actually know the answer, so they're assiduously, they're literally deciding, choosing not to say the answer on purpose because it would put them on the wrong side of the corporation that is sending them a PAC check. Let's just be clear about what's happening. And so it's like your 13-year-old might not do the work of like actually sort of thinking through the process, but they're not actively trying to avoid saying the thing that is the obvious answer, which is what Democrats end up doing. And like, and then we wonder why we lose. And you're like, well, it looks like you're being really cagey with me because you actually are being really cagey with me, but you're saying it enthusiastically. So you're enthusiastically cagey, which is like not a great thing if you're trying to win people over.
Enthusiastically cagey and deeply non-specific. Right? That's what we have going on here. Yeah, I mean, I think it's also because like the question is, will this poll well? Like, so I don't know if this is what I really want to say or what is the actual truth is going to poll well, or maybe I have evidence that it won't poll well. So like, I can't possibly say that thing, even though everybody knows that's the thing. And it's completely disingenuous and lacks authenticity. And I'm frankly allergic to that these days. Like, I just cannot handle any more lack of authenticity. And what you're talking about also reminds me of JFK's moonshot, right? Where he said, like, we're going to go to the moon. And we don't even know yet if the metals that we'll need to do that will exist, but we're going to sure as heck start working on them now. And he got people excited and galvanized around that idea. So, whether or not it polled or whatever back then. And so like, just really like having those big ideas and the courage to like lead people to them versus like reacting to the latest kind of poll in order to just hold on to what little bit of power that currently exists. So I just so much appreciate that.
I love that point. And there's a specific to quote him after he said, we're going to go to the moon. He said, not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
That's right.
And
that's right.
We're not even asking because it's hard, right? Like, I think there's something about daring do that's like very exciting, but like, we will get Medicare for all, not because it's easy or because it's hard, but because people are fucking suffering without it. Like that is a need unto itself. Why would go through all this effort to run for office? Like I'm breaking my mind trying to understand what is, I mean, maybe I'm just not fit this way, but like, what is so exciting about being a US senator or a US congressman or any of these things that mean that you should like literally curtail what it is that the job can actually do? The only value of this job is that you can render a service that you cannot render in other situations. At least for me, like I hate the idea of having to spend 4 days a week with like, a bunch of politicians in Washington, D.C., where it's swampy as hell, right? Both like figuratively and literally, and away from my family, right? To like, to what end? So you get to like go to fancy cocktail parties? Like, is that the fun? Like, I'm really trying to understand what the big to do is about if it's not actually trying to do something. And maybe like I'll get there and understand. But I look at most of the people in politics, and I see a sort of like addiction to veneration that is unearned. And maybe that's what it is. It's that like people acknowledge you at dinners where they serve rubbery chicken. Like, but if that's the goal, there are easier ways to be acknowledged at rubber chicken dinners. Really, truly easier ways.
Yeah.
So why do all this if it's not to say we can deliver something really big for people and ease their suffering and make them more secure and happier together? Like that really should be the only thing. And if that's not the only thing, then like, guys, there's easier ways to live a life. It's just not worth it.
Exactly. And especially
bring the servant back into public servant.
Right. And especially as hard as politics, as ugly and gross and swampy as politics is now, right? With social media and all of the like ugliness that you have to just endure to just dare to want to be a public servant. Why would you do that to just have rubbery chicken, right? So it's unimaginable. Abdul, as we kind of close out our time, 2 last questions. One, I just wonder if you have any kind of hot take advice for local activists in Michigan and these so-called red areas to help them kind of get the momentum to build blue power and start winning.
Honestly, tap into the joy of being able to connect with people.
Mm.
The thing that keeps me going, I'll be honest with you, like this is really grueling work. I have a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old. Every day that I'm away from them, I feel that really painfully. Like it's hard. And the thing that I try to connect to is the world that we're trying to build for them and all of our kids is one in which people connect across the most important things in their lives. And that connection is so limited, and it has been traded for this technological facsimile of connection that we do on the internet. And if you can really connect into the joy of looking somebody in the eye, even for a hard conversation, but the joy of being able to find that like self-discovery and other discovery that like is what humans have been doing for ages, but like we somehow forgot to do it because of all our technology now. I just think that that's the most powerful force in the world. And the more you can intentionally tap it, the more it will sustain you through this. It will give you hope. It will give you optimism, even in the setting of really, really difficult conversations. And I just think sometimes in these movements, we get caught up by the incentives of social media, which are to be cynical, which are to put down, which are to disregard, which are to deplatform. And I just think the more you really connect into like real human engagement and you tap into the joy of that and you create something that celebrates that joy, the more powerful your movement will be.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you so
great.
much.
And we always end with kind of a goofy question. So here goes. All right. I don't know if anybody else has seen it. Clearly, I watch a lot of TV because I keep talking about TV. But on SNL, shortly after the Charlottesville episode where, there was the white supremacists and counter protesters and Heather Heyer was murdered and, Trump said good people on both sides. Tina Fey went on SNL Weekend Update, and her skit was she was talking about everything that was happening, but she was literally eating an entire sheet cake while she was doing it, just shoveling it in, complaining about everything. It's called sheet caking, and I'm considering bringing it back. Now, what would be your dessert of choice if you were going to sheet cake? Now, I would use a sheet cake. I don't care, not yellow, white, chocolate's fine, has to have buttercream icing, not that silly whipped crap. What would be your sheet cake of choice? And it doesn't have to be a cake. What's your dessert?
Oh, can I go first? Can I go
Yes,
first,
you can.
Abdul? Do you mind? Okay. Or second? Oh, I'm going to break the rules because that's the kind of person I am. And I'm not going to pick a dessert. So I'm going to pick traditional Midwestern Michigan tuna noodle casserole. That's my sheet cake.
I knew it.
Right? You
I
would
love
have
that.
probably guessed, Jennifer.
Yes,
Tuna
she
noodle
makes it
casserole
for her
is-
birthday because her family
Yes.
won't eat it.
My family will not eat tuna noodle casserole, so I make it for myself once a year. Big tuna noodle casserole just for me. I tell them every year that they cannot have any of it. They don't want any of it anyway, but I let them know. And I make it for myself. I don't let my husband make it because he would get it wrong. He would try to like fancy it up. I just know it. So I make the tuna noodle casserole, and that would be like what I would eat instead of a sheet cake while I was like complaining about the
So
world.
that is the most mid-Michigan answer I've ever heard. So 2 questions about your tuna noodle casserole.
Yeah.
My mom used to make it, and there was always a debate with peas or without peas, with
No
breadcrumbs or without
peas.
breadcrumbs.
Oh,
Okay,
you
no
gotta have
peas.
peas.
No peas. No peas.
But I
No
use
peas.
frozen peas. They're not mushy like the
Nope.
canned peas.
No, I use broccoli. Broccoli in the tuna noodle casserole. Because you have to
Okay.
have something green, but not peas.
All
No way.
right, breadcrumbs on
And
the top.
no, not
Oh,
breadcrumbs.
okay.
Crunched up potato chips on the top. That's
Oh,
what goes on the
wow.
top of tuna casserole. Usually like the like ruffled potato chips and then like
Okay.
broccoli, not peas.
And we're gonna make this more
no to
Michigan by
both.
putting better made potato chips.
Well,
Better
yeah,
made, yeah.
it has to be
potato
better
chips on the
made.
top.
Drop down with some Fago or Werner's. So
Exactly.
for me, it is definitely ice cream, and it is probably Moose Tracks. And the problem for me and ice cream is like I don't have a stop function. Like when it comes to ice cream, I will eat all the ice cream until the ice cream is done. And like it has become a real problem in my life to the point where like I buy small pints of ice cream and I hide them from myself. So like there's extra work to go get it. But like I will start taking a bite and then I'll take another bite and then I'll put it away, and then be like, but that's delicious though. So I pull it back and then start taking.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you look like you're having a lot of problems with the ice cream.
well, talk to me in a year. So
No doubt.
the other thing that I sort of OD'd on the last campaign was Happy Cola, the gummy bears that taste like Coca-Cola.
Oh,
Have you ever had those
Oh,
before?
I haven't heard of those.
Yeah. That was definitely a vice. Like if I'm doing things right, it's going to be beef jerky probably. You know, if I'm like actually, you know, trying to be reasonable, and like now on because we spend a lot of time in the car going all these places. So I have like full on bans about like different foodstuffs that will not be in the car because I will find them and eat them like a bear. Like just imagine like a bear. Like if it's there, I'll find it and I'll eat it. So it's like all beef jerky. Like, you know, people who know me know that like I really enjoy sardines. I know, but like actually now that you mention it, Sarah, like I'm trying to wonder, like, is there a sardines version of tuna noodle casserole? Like, this is like the kind that your husband would make, and you'd be like, get this out of my plate.
He would think about that and like fancy it up and just fuck it up. Like it would just be wrong tuna.
Yeah.
But maybe like to each their own. But I'm sticking to my own 3 ingredient recipe.
I love it.
And I think if I ran for office, I would be the same way. I see food, I eat it. Whereas Sarah, during her campaign, you would have to be like, Sarah, have you eaten today?
No,
I have not. Please, here is a plate of food. Please eat.
Yeah, it's so grueling and also engaging, right? You don't even think about like your own needs and wants because you're, you know, so engaged in all these amazing conversations and the work that you're doing. And on that, just as we kind of close, just ending with some gratitude, Abdul, for joining our pod, for running for office, for being, you know, a stalwart public servant here in the state of Michigan for so long. We really appreciate you showing up, you doing the hard work of campaigning and doing it for all the right reasons. So thank you. Thank you for everything.
You'll make it a lot easier. So I'm grateful to you and appreciate you, and hope that more folks continue to check out what you're doing here, because it's really important. And, you know, you're folks who aren't just talking the talk, you're walking the walk, like you're actually doing it. And so there's a lot to be learning out of Midland, in Central Michigan generally, and y'all are helping lead that fight. So grateful to you for taking the time to share it with everyone else, and grateful to have some time with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for everyone for listening in. We're the Beyond Resistance Pod, where we help red communities build blue power and start winning. So until next time.
Bye, everybody.